Hi boys and girls, Miss Carrie here. Today I'm going to actually teach you a little bit about poetry. A lot of you have probably read some poems or seen them, but we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive and just kind of learn what is poetry, what are different parts of poems, how can I maybe create a poem, what should I include in them, just some things like that to get you thinking with your reading this week. So to start with poetry, what is poetry? It's a type of literature, first of all, so it's something that we read. It stirs the reader's imagination or emotion. So poets use different things throughout their poems to stir your imagination, to get you thinking, to get you picturing things in your minds. They use these different tools that we're going to learn about to do this while they're writing their poems. So first, parts of a poem. Two really big parts that I want you to focus on while you're listening to the poem and looking at the one that I'm going to read later are the line breaks and stanzas. So I have a little example right here. It says, "The baby bat screamed out in fright, turn on the dark, I'm afraid of the light." So some of you might hear that little rhyming there. That's one part of poetry. But however, the stanza is going to be this whole small group of lines within the poem. So a lot of poems will have separate, they look like paragraphs, but we call those stanzas in poems. The second part of this I want you to pay attention are the line breaks. So each line, you notice how it's not a full complete sentence on one line. So each line is a stanza. It's called a line break, where each line of text ends in the poem. So at the end of the first line here, the baby bat, that would be a line break right there. The other big part of poetry is that they use sensory details to help get those emotions stirring or to get those imaginations going for what's going on in their poem. Things that you use with sensory details are your five senses. So you see, hear, feel, smell, and taste. And these are all things that you can include in your poems when you're writing. So I have a little elements of poetry chart to kind of help you think of some things and know what different parts can go in a poem. It's kind of a lot, I know, so I'm just going to briefly go over all of these. You'll get a little bit more information with this later in the week, but just for now, this is going to be a brief little start into what poetry is. So it can rhyme, it can have rhythm, which musical quality or beat. It can have repetition, so repeat things. Imagery, which using vivid description, so think of your sensory details there. A simile, comparing two things using like or as, which we should know that by now. Same with metaphor, comparing two different things. Alliteration is repeat the beginning sound, so Paul's penguins play ping pong, repeating that beginning sound. Onomatopoeia sounds like the noise or action it's making, so crash, beep, those kind of sounds. And personification makes a non-human thing seem real. So these are just some of the elements of poetry that you can do and you can include in your writing. And we'll actually add this to your Google Classroom so that you will be able to see these and look these up with your writing. For today, I'm going to read this poem called September. While I'm reading this poem, I want you to go through and think about what's going on or what you can picture in your mind from what the author is writing. So I'm going to read through the poem and I want you to think about what's going on. Maybe close your eyes while you hear it, just to kind of see what you imagine in your head while I'm reading. Okay, September. The breezes taste of apple peel. The air is full of smells to feel. Ripe fruit, old footballs, drying grass, new books and blackboard, chalk in class. The bee his hive well-honeyed hums, while mother cuts chrysanthemums. Like plates washed clean, with suds the days are polished with a morning glaze. So there was a lot going on in that poem. There's a lot of sensory details happening. So I'll go through and read through it again, but I want you to think this time, what did you maybe hear, feel, smell, taste? What are things you might not be able to feel them or smell them, but what can you imagine is going on while I read this story? So think a little bit more about those sensory details. I'm going to read it one more time. The breezes taste of apple peel. The air is full of smells to feel. Ripe fruit, old footballs, drying grass, new books and blackboard, chalk in class. The bee his hive well-honeyed hums, while mother cuts chrysanthemums. Like plates washed clean, with suds the days are polished with a morning haze. So once again, there was kind of a lot going in that September poem. It's all talking about the month September. So sometimes there were some rhyming words in there, sometimes there wasn't. It just kind of depends. There was lines and stanzas going on, which I'll show in there in a little bit. But what could you feel? What could you taste? Maybe the taste of the apple peel in that first little part is what you were thinking of. Or feeling the breeze on your face from the cold wind, the bees buzzing. You can kind of imagine hearing a little bee buzz in your ear. So little things like that go on, and that's what is called sensory details. And great poets use those in their writing to help the reader imagine what's going on in their poem. So what you're going to do is think of a month, and you're going to be doing this later on throughout the week and creating a poem to go with it, or a season, or something to go, a poem to go with it. I'm going to brainstorm a little bit with July just to kind of get your brains going. So instead of September was used in the book, but I'm going to do this with July. So what are things that happen in July, or that we find in July, or that go on, that we could maybe add in our writing? So I'm automatically thinking of maybe snacks I eat or places I go. So you wear shorts because it's really warm usually. You could go swimming. You could watch fireworks. I eat a lot of watermelon because it's in season, so juicy watermelon. Maybe you go to the pool. These are just a few different things that you can use just to kind of get your brain started or going when you think of a new month that you're going to write. So like I said, by the end of the week, you're going to actually be creating your own poem, and you get to pick what you're writing about for your season or your month that you want to choose. This is just to kind of get you started and get you thinking. I'm going to go back and revisit the elements of poetry here. So think of these elements while you're creating your poem, but especially focus here on my imagery. So the 5 senses, you want your reader to be able to imagine what's going on in your story and maybe feel like they're there. What can they smell? What can they taste, hear, feel? Any of those senses that you can include in your writing help to make a really great poem. So if you have any questions, let your teachers know, but have fun this week.